The strait darkens. Satellite feeds flicker. One shows cargo ships frozen mid-route, their AIS signals vanishing like digital ghosts. Another reveals military installations going silent, their usual electromagnetic chatter replaced by an unsettling static. A third captures the moment. Economic markets cascade red in real time, futures plummeting within seconds. Three seemingly unrelated events. One hidden calculation. But what if the greatest threat to Taiwan isn't what Beijing does, but what it stops doing? For decades, the world watched China's aggressive moves, military drills, economic coercion, diplomatic isolation. We measured threat through action. Yet the most destabilizing shift may come through strategic restraint, a calculated pivot that reshapes alliances, fractures Western unity, and repositions Taiwan from a geopolitical flashpoint into an irrelevant bargaining chip. In the next 24 months, will China double down on confrontation, or does it already hold the winning hand by simply waiting? The world sees tanks, the world sees missiles, the world sees fighter jets screaming across the Taiwan Strait, and it assumes that's where power lives. But Beijing's military buildup isn't the story, it's the distraction. China has amassed the largest military force in Asia, over 2 million active personnel, advanced hypersonic missiles, carrier strike groups, electronic warfare capabilities that can jam GPS across entire regions. When you hear China's military threat to Taiwan, the instinct is to measure tonnage, count warheads, calculate kill probabilities. It feels logical. It feels like military superiority equals geopolitical victory. It doesn't. Here's why. Military force is only effective when the opponent believes you'll use it. The moment China launches an invasion, it loses economic integration with the West. Its supply chains fracture. Its access to advanced semiconductors evaporates. Its currency becomes radioactive to global investors. The cost of conquest becomes infinitely higher than the benefit of control. China's military isn't built to invade Taiwan. It's built to make everyone believe invasion is possible while pursuing objectives that don't require a single shot fired. The real power is economic suffocation. Between 2015 and 2024, China increased military spending by 187%, rising from $145 billion to $415 billion annually. During the same period, Taiwan's defense budget grew only 41%, from $10.2 billion to $14.4 billion. Yet here's the overlooked metric. 92% of Taiwan's semiconductor exports flow through the Taiwan Strait, representing $180 billion in annual trade. China controls 78% of rare earth mineral refining globally. If Beijing simply restricted processing capacity for Taiwan's tech supply chain without military action, the island's economy would contract 23 to 31% within 18 months, according to Taiwanese economic models themselves. The asymmetry isn't measured in missiles, it's measured in dependencies. Taiwan isn't just an island. It's a vulnerability wrapped in silicon. The numbers are so extreme they sound fabricated. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, produces 92% of the world's most advanced computer chips. Not most, not a plurality, 92%. Every iPhone processor, every data center server, every military guidance system that the United States deploys relies on fabrication occurring on an island that China claims as its own territory. This is the modern equivalent of controlling the Suez Canal, except the Suez Canal can be bypassed. Taiwan cannot. When geopolitical analysts discuss Taiwan's strategic importance, they're dancing around a brutal reality. The Western world has voluntarily outsourced its technological nervous system to a 70-year-old island 100 miles from a nuclear-armed power that explicitly refuses to renounce military options. It's not a defensive position. It's a hostage situation that everyone agreed to pretend doesn't exist. China understands this asymmetry completely. Beijing doesn't need to invade Taiwan to control it. It needs to make Western governments understand that any military support, any diplomatic defiance, any economic sanction will result in a semiconductor embargo that crashes global GDP by 3 to 5% within 90 days. That's not a threat, that's a fact. That's leverage. The question becomes, how long can Taiwan maintain independence when its survival depends entirely on whether Washington believes the economic pain is worth it? And more critically, what happens when China stops asking permission and starts demanding capitulation through economic pressure alone? This is where the calculations shift. TSMC generated $69.9 billion in revenue in 2023, with 54% dependent on advanced chip production. The global semiconductor market is valued at $574 billion annually. A 90-day Taiwan production halt would cost the global economy an estimated $300 to $400 billion in lost output. Intel and Samsung combined control only 8% of advanced chip manufacturing capacity, insufficient to replace Taiwan's output. The average time to build a new foundry facility is 4 to 5 years and costs $20 billion. Currently, 19 Fortune 500 companies have production dependencies that would face critical shortages within 30 days of a Taiwan supply disruption. The U.S. CHIPS Act allocated $39 billion to rebuild domestic capacity, enough to replace only 12% of Taiwan's current production by 2030. China watches these numbers. It counts them. It knows them better than Washington does. The next 24 months will determine whether China shifts strategy fundamentally. Not because of military capability, that's already established, but because geopolitical conditions are aligning in Beijing's favor in unprecedented ways. The strategic pivot Beijing could execute involves 3 coordinated moves, each legal, each economically devastating, each plausibly deniable. First, the gradual semiconductor leverage. China implements environmental regulations on rare earth processing that mysteriously delay Taiwan-bound shipments by 60 to 90 days. Nothing illegal, just bureaucratic friction. Enough to create supply chain panic without firing a shot. Second, the economic isolation. Beijing increases investment in alternative semiconductor research while tightening financial regulations on companies with Taiwan operations. Chinese banks reduce lending, insurance premiums skyrocket. Over 18 months, the cost of doing business with Taiwan becomes prohibitively high, not through sanctions, but through market forces that appear organic. Third, the diplomatic reframing. China stops talking about military conquest. Beijing pivots to peaceful reunification messaging, positioning itself as reasonable while framing Taiwan's independence as obstinate refusal. Taiwan becomes the obstacle to peace. Western support becomes prolonging suffering. The moral high ground shifts. If China executes this pivot, Taiwan faces an existential choice: capitulation through economic strangulation or military confrontation that Washington may no longer feel obligated to join. But here's the grounded counter-argument. This strategy assumes American political will completely collapses. Congress has passed bipartisan legislation treating Taiwan as strategically non-negotiable. Taiwan is already diversifying manufacturing. TSMC is building facilities in Arizona and Japan. These moves take years, but they reduce Taiwan's isolation. Scale paragraph. China's foreign direct investment in semiconductor manufacturing outside Taiwan increased 340% between 2022 and 2025, rising from $2.1 billion to $9.2 billion annually. Taiwan's TSMC Arizona facility will produce 600,000 wafers monthly by 2027, approximately 8% of Taiwan's current output. China's domestic semiconductor self-sufficiency has risen from 16% 2020 to 31% 2025, though advanced chip production remains 89% dependent on foreign equipment. Taiwan's government has earmarked $8.6 billion for defense procurement through 2026, representing 2.3% of GDP. The question isn't whether China can shift its approach, it's whether it has already begun, and whether we're positioned to recognize it before it's too late.